All right, now let's have our first conversation today. There are changes made to the terminologies that define Nigeria's labor force, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS says that this is necessary because of limitations of unemployment statistics, and also to provide broader measures of labor underutilization as response to emerging social and economic information needs, among others. Now, let's understand more about these changes with Mr. Paul Alaje, senior economist and partner with SPM Professionals. He joins us here in the studio. Mr. Alaje, good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Well, this changes to the definition of employment, unemployment, and all of that. How often is it done globally? What's the ideal?
Well, in 2015, something like this happened under the Statistician General, Yemi Kale. It used to be 40 hours a week, and Yemi Kale and his team reviewed it to 20 hours a week. In fact, ILO had put Yemi Kale under pressure at the time and say it should be 1 hour a week. And he gave a reason why Nigeria should not adopt 1 hour a week, because at that time, if Nigeria had adopted 1 hour a week, even though unemployment at that time was 23.5%, but Yemi Kale had mentioned that if we were to adopt 1 hour a week, unemployment will reduce significantly to 2 to 3%. So the question is, if you go on the street of Lagos, on the street of Abuja, Kano, Port Harcourt, wherever you may be watching us from today, would you agree with the number that Nigeria's unemployment figure is 2% or 3%? Even as an unemployed person, we're saying just 2% of you.
Okay, Mr. Alaje, just before we get ahead of ourselves, you know, because I know some of our viewers may not know these changes, so let's just state it out. So before now, the working population used to be individuals between the age of 15 and 64.
Yes.
But now it's just anybody above 15 years.
Yes.
There's no limits. I believe that's part of it.
So it's part of the review. So let me take us through what we call the labor force, and also why do we have unemployment, and look at the age distribution. Before now, when we talk of the population is measured by the National Population Commission, and if you check IMF website, if you check the website of that agency, among many others, everybody agreed that Nigerian population is above 215 million people. But let's be charitable and say we are just 210 million people. We are just being charitable to allow for error margin or whatever gap. So that on one side. The National Bureau of Statistics says that our labor force is less than 70 million people. What is the meaning? Labor force are people that are willing and able to work. It does not necessarily mean that they are working. So we have another group of people, 140 million people, who are either too young to work or above 64 or up to 65 who are too old to work. So you need to remove all of those. So when you remove them and people are not willing to work anyways, then you have just 70 million people, even though the number as we speak today is not up to 70 million people. Of that number, we now have about 40% of that total number of the 70 million people unemployed. So when you remove 70%, approximately 25 million, add it to 140 million, then you have 165 million people. The implication is that you have only 45 million people that are actively engaged in minimum of 20 hours job a week. That is what the data is saying. But now
that is the
format we were using up till the recent review that the Bureau of Statistics, and Ministry of Labor and Productivity came up with. Now there is a lot of difference happening now. First, you have to be above 15 to ad infinitum. Once you can work, even if you are 100 years old, then you still be classified as part of the labor force. And there is a lot of worry because even federal government policy, once you are above 60 years, would you still be able to, are you still supposed to work, even though you might be working, but officially, are you still captured? Even as a lecturer, there is still a benchmark. So when we say that there is no benchmark, we are saying whether you are young or old, work. So that's fine. But the real thing for me is that before 2015, we were using 40 hours a week. At 2015, we reviewed it to 20 hours a week. As if that were not enough. In 2023, we're saying we want to align with whether World Bank or ILO to review our work duration, minimum work requirement to be classified as employed to 1 hour a week. What does it mean? If somebody helps me to fetch water in areas where there are no water, and you just pushed a wheelbarrow for 1 hour, and that's the only thing you have done for that week, and I pay you for that labor you have done, then are we saying that person is truly employed or is underemployed? These are questions that I think Bureau of Statistics we need to answer in the coming period.
So before now, that category of individual would be classed under underemployed,
yes.
but now they're being captured into employed.
So you're going to see the next the figure. The figure will certainly reduce to single digits, but I'm worried if.
So sorry, because I mean I understand, but I mean there's so many people who are watching. We need to carry them along. So what it means is that because we have enlarged the brackets of employed, that means the percentage of our unemployment is going to reduce drastically. So telling the world that Nigeria has little or no problem when it comes to employment.
That's exactly what we'll be doing. So unlike if we are told the world that we have huge unemployment, people who want to do business might come to Nigeria expecting to have relatively cheaper labor. But when we tell them that we have huge employment, they will believe that because the supply side is small, then price of labor will be very high. They may be discouraged from coming. So I'm not sure Bureau of Statistics have thought this through, especially the Ministry of Labor and Productivity. Because when you look at report that we have seen in the media, the Ministry of Labor and Productivity, and I think the minister particularly, is putting the Bureau under pressure to adopt what ILO is doing. And you will see under the former Secretary General, the minister had mentioned that he has criticized what the figure coming from that agency of government as not aligned with World Bank. And I even alleged that World Bank had criticized the National Bureau of Statistics. But of course, National Bureau of Statistics has said, no, our figure has been accepted, and there will be no time World Bank has criticized what we are doing. But what Nigeria should expect in the coming period is that the Bureau of Statistics had said is going to adopt 1 hour a week criteria. Unfortunately, that would mean that many people who are not really doing something significant will now be said to be employed. So prediction, we'll be looking at less than 10% unemployment figure. But should we be planning on less than 10%? Does it mean that Nigeria are truly employed? Unlike countries who you see when you say they have 6% unemployment figure and government is still doing so much to improve employment. But in the case of Nigeria, when you say that your unemployment is single digit, what does it mean? People who are able, and I think that if this is what ILO is saying, ILO is actually not helping African countries, unlike in the environment where there are support systems for people who may not be working up to 1 hour. You know, I remember an argument President Buhari made many years ago when he said the cost of PMS in Saudi Arabia cannot be higher than the cost of PMS in Nigeria, and on that basis, he wants to shift the price a little forward. I said, Mr. President, hold a minute, because you have not told us the minimum wage in Saudi Arabia, because purchase of PMS is a function of income. If I don't earn, then how do I buy? So you need to also increase the minimum wage and ensure that productivity has increased in Nigeria for you to now compare us on one leg with Saudi Arabia. And this is the thing. So if you say this National Bureau of Statistics, to me, I have serious concern regarding what the National Bureau of Statistics want to adopt. Even if you want to compare Nigeria with some countries, you also need to compare our environment. You also need to compare the ease with which we can get job in Nigeria before you can say you want to move Nigeria from the 20 hours a week criteria to 1 hour. I don't know how to swallow that. It's
you know, Mr. Alaje, the example you gave, I think, just leaves a picture in my mind that if you engage someone to help you fetch water, and the person, maybe because you know areas where there are no water in the house, so fetch water for 1 hour, then you classify that person as an employed.
Yes,
I mean,
and it's just going to do that once a week. All it needs to do that
is just 1 hour in a week.
So this is the contradiction. If minimum wage is 30,000 a month, if you fetch 4 times once a week, 4 times, will that 1 hour job be equivalent of minimum wage? Questions that agencies of government need to respond to before we blindly accept what is being forced down our throat.
Yeah, well, we're out of time now, but I mean, this also is another question, you know, even when we have inflation figures, a lot of people question the reality. How much reality does that inflation figure, which of course is coming from the MBS, how much of the reality does it capture? So this is another of such questions.
What we need to know about inflation is that if your salary was 250,000 naira on the 1st of January 2021, just hold on, by December 31st, 2023, your salary still 250,000, but what you'll be taking home in real sense, in economic terms, is just 100,000. And you know what? The invisible force has taken 150 value from your pocket. So even though people have concern, I've seen international organizations said the Nigeria inflation is certainly higher than that. Even what we have is still in average of 20% of our wealth in our pocket. So what I think government should do so that we don't criticize and not bring solution: jobs, jobs, job, manufacturing, productivity, production, mechanized farming is what we should do. I've said on this show before, we have 40 million pupils. Can we revive or, bring back the textile sector? Kaduna used to be known for that, and I think we still have the capacity to go back into textile. Make school uniform that Nigerians will use by Nigerians to be sewn by Nigeria. What we are doing now is just to sew by Nigerian tailors, but we need to actually make those school uniforms, those fabric, we need to make them in Nigeria. It is when you create jobs that we can say that unemployment truly has reduced, not by changing the goalposts in the middle of the game. And you know, if it is Arsenal, their fans will really not support us.
Mr. Alaje, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so very much for having me.
All right, well, certainly the MBS might need to speak to some economists and look at the implication of adopting this ILO recommendation of 1 hour for a week being termed employment in the country.